call me Onibo. Makana Onibo. Anywhere I enter, they call me Onibo. Makana Onibo. All over the world, they call me Onibo. Makana Onibo. Ndi bone dosi obodo, ndi bone mepe obodo, ndi bone hazi obodo, ndi bone mofuma.
We're so excited, we're so happy to see all your beautiful and handsome faces again this month. We're so happy to have all of you attend this month's Ńkàtá Ụ. So our speaker is here already and he'll be walking in shortly. All right, so our speaker is coming in, but then before we start, okay, some of you are starting the networking now. Okay, it's all right. We have Adide in the building. You're welcome. Odima, before we start the actual lecture, we have a very brief presentation for us, and I'll be inviting to the stage a very wonderful artist, a creative, and an all-round amazing person who is a friend of the Center for Memories. So I'm going to call on the stage Caesar Ama to come and give us the opening presentation.
Igbo ndị ọma ndị na-ege ntị, asị m ka m were ohere a nabata onye ọbụla na nkata ụmụ Ibe nke ga-eme n'ọnwa asatọ a, nke bụ nke nwanne anyị nwoke bụka n'otu ndị isi na ihe egwuregwu na Naịjirịa bụ Obi Asika ga-ekwu okwu. Asị m nke onye eji ya jidesie ya ike. Amasịkwa m ya dịrị onye ukwu mma, ya dịkwara onye nta mma. Ya dịrị anyị mma n'Eke, ya dịrị anyị mma n'Orie, ya dịrị anyị mma n'Afọ. Nkwọ ga-abịa, asịkwa m ya dịkwara anyị na mma. Ndị gara ahịa, asị m ha rie uru ahịa. Ndị mụrụ nwa, asị m ha rie uru nwa ha mụrụ. Ndị ga-aga ubi, asị m ha kụta mkpụrụ ọma. Ndị ga-aga mba, asị m ha zụta nke ọma. Ụmụ nwaanyị anyị ndị ga-aga August meeting n'ọnwa asatọ a, asị m ka okporo ụzọ rubere ha isi. Ọ bịara bụ onye egbula ya, ọ lawakwanụ ya na mkpumkpu azụ esola ala. Asị m ntụ mmiri ntụ azụ, mmiri atala ma azụ anwụla. Kama ha ga-eri anyị, ndị nwe masị m ka anyị see n'elu mmiri. Asị m egbe, ugo, atụpịa na nwanza, otu ukwu osisi, otu eluigwe ọcha nke si ibe ebere, asị m ka nkwukwa ya. Adaka hapụrụ Amadi Mbazu ji ya. Azụ tọrọ ndị nne ụtọ n'ofe ọkwụrụ ya. Ogbu nkwụ na nkwụ ya. Asị m ọkụ ngwọ na ngwọ ya. Dibịa na akpa ọgụ ya. Nwa egbula anyị, mmadụ egbukwala n'anyị. Onye nsọ ya gafela n'ama, asị m bịa n'ụzọ gbaa mgba. Ụmụ Ibe, asị m ka m chetakwara unu na enyi awụghị ọchị, ụtọ awụghị ọchị. Ọsọ abụghị ije, ije abụkwanụghị ọsọ. Oyi abụghị enyi, enyi abụghị oyi. Asị m dịka m hụrụ gị taa ka m hụ gị echi. I know the taste of our unification. I know the smell of our culture. But we all seem to have forgotten so soon the long years we sat under the moon, roasting meat from the deep, telling our meat from lip to lip, and reminding the day to come to spare no man a chance to live. Yet, we all seem to have forgotten so soon the long years we sat under the moon, counting the next market days after our fall, long before we came to learn that business closes after fall. Each man, each day, telling his story that no one will take from him his glory. Yet, we all seem to have forgotten so soon those long years we sat under the moon, chewing fried breadfruit from the okwa tree, scooping sliced oba served on a table of 3. And drinking the sweet wine of the raffia, palm wine before
August, September, and just like that. And then in November 2018, we held, the November 2018 edition. The distinguished speaker then was Chioma Yvonne Mbanefo, who spoke on Gidi Gidi Bugweze. Okay, and then in 2019 we continued as usual. In February 2019, we had Chinenye Mba Uzuku, who spoke on Onyekwe Chiekwe Igbos in a digital economy. And in March, we had the CEO of AfriInvest, Mr. Ike Chioke, speak on Mburonyekuru, Reinventing Enterprise na Alaigbo. In April 2019, we had Dr. Joe Abba, and the topic then was Ohanweze, Governance Matters. And then in July 2019, we had also a very distinguished guest, Mr. Frank Mweke Jr., who spoke on Makoganiru, Igbo Renaissance, and the leadership question. In 2020, Ńkàtá Ụ did not run its full course, because of obvious reasons. So in 2020, we had just 3 editions of Ńkàtá Ụ. The first one was on February 6, 2020, where Mr. Kingsley Eze, the managing director of Tennessee, spoke on Akurolo, building a startup nation. And in March 2020, we had the former chairman of the Enugu Sports Club, Chief Ben Etiaba, who is seated here. Welcome, sir. He spoke on Ijelu Obodozi, paradigm of servant leadership. And in December 2020, after a couple of months, I think 8 months or so, when we could have another edition due to the COVID pandemic, we had Professor Osita Ugwu. In the whole of 2021, we could not have Ńkàtá Ụ, unfortunately, because we had a second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, so we just took a break. But we came back bigger, we came back stronger, we came back better in 2022, and we resumed in February 2022 with Professor Cheluchi Onyemelukwe speaking on Afamefuna, reclaiming the Igbo identity in challenging times. And in March, we had Ife Nachinwanya who speak on Nkanozu, a journey into Igbo ingenuity through arts and architecture. In April, we had Dr. Sam Amadi, who spoke on Azotala, Azowute, civic transformation and the survival of Igbo in a chaotic world. Okay, so in May, we had Professor Pat Utomi. That was also a very interesting session. Professor Pat spoke on Ako Bumeri, paradox of Igbo ascendancy. And then the last edition of Ńkàtá Ụ will be held in June 2022, where we had Mrs. Victoria Ibezimoheri, the Executive Director, Spaces for Change. She spoke on Igwebuike, unlocking our productive potential. Ńkàtá Ụ did not hold last month. Unfortunately, we had to take a step back and do some internal review of the program. And this month, we are back with a very big fish, obviously. Sorry, my boss already called him up, but I'm going to do some kind of introduction of Mr. Obi Asika. So personally, I didn't know much of Mr. Obi Asika until my boss, Mr. Ihani Iboko, started talking about him at the office. And then I also watched Nigerian Idol, and he was a judge on that show, and he struck me, personally. And Mr. Obi Asika wears many caps. Mr. Obi Asika is a creative industries entrepreneur, and he's a soft power advocate focused on the possibilities that the creative and cultural industries hold for us. And listening to Mr. Obi Asika today earlier at the Center for Memories, because we have this mentorship session that we hold, a 90-minute mentorship session with the distinguished speakers of Ńkàtá Ụ just before they come here in the evening. I listened to Mr. Obi Asika and I saw how passionate he was about not just Nigeria, but advancing the global black heritage. I mean, Mr. Obi Asika has a deep well of knowledge there. So Mr. Obi Asika is the founder of Ibaje. Ibaje Asika is a cultural resource center, located in Onitsha, Anambra State. Also, Dragon Africa, a strategic communications agency. Mr. Obi Asika has been the executive director of many global events, major global TV franchises, and please permit me to read some of them. They include the FIFA Under-20 World Cup, in 1999, the CAF Nations Cup in 2000, Big Brother Naija 2006, Dragons Den Nigeria 2007, The Apprentice Africa 2008, Naija Sings 2009 to 2012, Calabar Festival 2008, and Calabar Rocks TV series 2008, Soccerex West Africa, and Social Media Week Lagos 2012 to present, just to name a few. Yes. Also, Mr. Obi Asika is the National Coordinator of the Technical Working Group for the Creative Industries, the tourism, culture, and hospitality sectors for the 2020 to 2030 Media and Long-Term National Development Plan for the Nigeria 2050 Agenda. He has worked with and also advised, multilaterals, corporations, governments, brands, agencies on the creative industries, sports, strategic communications, public relations, and all. Mr. Obi Asika is a whole lot, and I just hope that we'll be able to, within the short time that we have, learn a lot from this man who, I don't know if he's a millennial or a Gen Z, because if you listen to him speak, there's a mixture of the two, okay? So Mr. Obi Asika was educated at Eton College, and then the University of Warwick, and then the Nigerian Law School. So please permit me to bring up stage the distinguished speaker of the August 2022 edition of Ńkàtá Ụ, Mr. Obi Asika. Please let's give him a round of applause.
Testing. Thank you, man. Thanks for the introduction. Good evening, everybody. And first things first, just want to thank the Center for Memories for inviting me and for having me here today. It's good to be home in 042. It's been a long time. And the other thing I wanted to say was that, I was listening to the list of speakers and feeling suitably intimidated. So I think it's like professor. Maybe Frank wasn't the only professor and Ben, but between the two of them, I know how sharp they are. So please excuse me if I go off point or if I don't quite hit the nail on the head. But it's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be in Enugu. I'm not sure about Ihai, because Ihai has kept me going since I arrived. Center for Memories have not actually given me a break, but we came here for the work, so it's important. I'm supposed to be talking about let's reimagine the possibilities and opportunities in Alaigbo. And, in a time like this, when obviously Nigeria specifically, maybe not the rest of the world, but the rest of the world obviously has difficulties, but in Nigeria we have our own specific set of difficulties. And one of the things I was saying earlier today was that all of us, we're all Nigerian, and I'm sure we all have devices. And if you check your device, 90% of the conversation that we seem to have about ourselves and each other is negative. It's like we just spend all the time talking ourselves down, diminishing ourselves, and not recognizing anything positive. And when I was coming here, I was thinking to myself, that's the last thing I want to do. I want to talk about the other side. I think there's a whole other side that is not discussed, that is not put front and center. So when I think about let's reimagine the opportunities, I was speaking to Emeka Mba earlier this morning. I didn't know he was in Enugu, but I wanted to go to Afia TV and see it. So I said to him, hi, let's just stop by. I stopped by, I saw him there, I was really happy. He said he came in because of this. I don't believe him, but it made me feel good. So I just want to say thanks, man. But, the thing about it is, when I think about the East, when I think about Enugu, and I think about what my subject matter was, it's like a full circle of connection. Because from my perspective, when I think about innovation, when I think about soft power, which I talk about quite a lot, when I think about technology and its application, I'm not sure a lot of people really understand that Enugu, to me, is home of all of these things, and has been home of these things long before they became trendy or popular. So I was like, if I'm going to talk about this in Enugu, and we're in 042, I should maybe go back to come forward. And what do I mean by that? In Nigeria today, everybody seems to be talking about our economic difficulties, the devaluation of the naira, the loss of hope. There's a definite gap between my generation, or those who are over 50, and the younger generation, who I would say anybody under 35. But I tend to gravitate towards young people anyway. No disrespect to my generation, but I just feel that in a country where the average age is 19, that's the demographic you have to focus on. The guys my age, their minds are made up. They are who they are. You're not going to change a lot of them, but the guys who are 19, 20, they can own the future. Now, for me, when I think about the opportunities for the East, and for Enugu specifically, from my perspective, Enugu has always been the sort of capital of the East, right? I know we have states, I know Ebonyi, all of these states, but really I still see, when you're driving, you don't see the borders, right? You don't suddenly drive and at this inch you get a beep on your phone saying you're now in Anambra State, or you're now in Enugu State or Ebonyi State. So to me, the state borders are not supposed to separate us, right? And I think the first thing I think that is being missing is collaboration. And that collaboration is missing at all levels. It's missing at the state government levels. It's missing at the private sector levels. And what the academics call the triple helix is not happening. We are not seeing a connection between the academics, the business people, and government. And when you don't see that happening, it's very difficult to get development, because everybody is in a silo, everybody is doing their own thing, and everybody apparently is correct. I'd like to suggest that there is a different way to approach this, right? When I think of this place, I think of the human talent here. Even in this room as I'm talking right now, I know people in this room who are world class. Yes, they happen to be from Enugu, or maybe they're not from Enugu, but we are in Enugu, they happen to be Igbo, but they're world class. So I think the only thing that holds you back is your own idea of yourself. The only thing that restricts you is your world vision. My view is that Igbos are worldwide and we're world class, and we occupy every inch of the earth, and when you get to where Igbos are, you will know they've been there. Well, how you will know they've been there is because of their energy, their attitude, and their intensity, right? We're very emotional people. Some people say it's aggressive. Some people say it's arrogant. I like to think it's emotion. We're very passionate, and we're very, very committed when we do commit to a particular line of action, place, or whatever. Now, for me, what I would love to see us commit to is to each other. If we can have a situation in the East where we see ourselves and the government sees the people and understands that the most important asset, and this is not just for the East, it's for Nigeria, the most important asset Nigeria has is not oil and gas, it's not land, it's the people. It's the people that will change everything. It's the people that have the capacity to build. It's not the office. The office is nice. The office is what people look to. But actually, it's the people that change everything. The question is, why are we not investing in our people? That's the real question that has to be asked. Because when I look at the East, and I think about, and I don't know, I was asking a question this morning that I'm not aware of in the last 20 years. I don't know, I hope it's happened, but I haven't really heard or seen that our state governments have created programs for young people. Not just, what I call highlight, headline programs, deep programs that will enable and activate young capacity. 5-6 years ago, I was talking with a gentleman who sadly passed, who was representing MIT, and MIT was doing this innovation partnership with Lagos State. This partnership meant that MIT would take a certain amount of leaders in Lagos State, train them up, take them to MIT, and then bring them back to retrain the rest of the people in the ecosystem. This project was going to cost about $1 million and affect 30,000 people at the trainer level and could impact 300,000 people. And I went to talk to him. I said, listen, I know you're not in office, but is there any way you can call your colleagues? Because this issue of youth disaffection in the East, a lot of it is to do with a lack of hope. A lot of it is to do with a lack of opportunity. If we give our people skills and the tools to win, these things begin to go away. We can't be sitting here and pretending we're not seeing what's going on. Unfortunately, we couldn't find anybody who was ready to commit to this sort of visions. I believe that until we invest in us, you can't expect anybody else to invest in us, right? I hear it all the time. Earlier this morning I said, how do you get foreign investors? I said, if you haven't got an investor or a backer on your streets, it's going to be quite hard to go to Lagos and get a backer or go to London and get a backer. Although sometimes I know it's important to leave your environment. I call it like the helicopter view. If you're in traffic, maybe not in Enugu, but does Enugu have traffic now? I don't really know. But if you're in traffic in Lagos, you might think that's the only view of Lagos. But if you go up 50 feet and you're on a helicopter, your view of Lagos changes totally. And you suddenly find out that it's planning that's causing the traffic. It's not the space, because there's enough space for everybody, but they didn't plan it properly. So everything has a cause and effect. My feel is that if the East, there are certain things happening, and one of the things I've always done is to make sure that I try to make sure my voice is in the room. You know, it's like representation. There must be a view from the East when a decision is being made. You must be able to apply leverage to every situation. And it's not about government, it's just about industries and sectors. So the Nigeria Startup Bill has been passed. It will be assented to by the President. I'm urging you, those of you who are in government, those of you who are going to get into government, every single state in the Southeast needs to adopt the Nigerian Startup Bill and domesticate it. We need to bring our industries and our enterprise to technology. If you look at the markets in the East, which have been the drivers of our wealth for, 30, 40 years, the fundamental belief I have is that, I'm sure you know Amazon is entering Nigeria next year. Well, actually, they're actually already here and they've begun their operations, right? So all those markets are at risk. And they're at risk from technology and they're at risk from logistics and convenience. They can't scale further than they are already because of access issues, safety issues, a lack of investment, and no support from their host governments. So how do we change the mentality from taxation to investment support? How do you create a situation where you back the markets? I believe, for example, that an absolute priority focus for the East should be to look at how we can take these markets and turn them to digital platforms, right? What do I mean by digital platforms? I mean ecosystems. The platform economy is the word for it, but if you have an Android phone, if you have an iOS phone, if you're on Facebook, you have Apple, any of these things, these are all platform businesses. Look at the transactional value of what happens per second. You'll be speechless. I wish I had my slides to show you, but literally, I'm telling you that YouTube on a daily basis generates more content than the history of television since television started. That's just to give you an idea of what is happening. So that platform economy can change the dynamics of all our markets. When I talk about Nigerian soft power and entertainment, a lot of times in Nigeria, people think entertainment, they're just having fun. They're not just having fun. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. In Nigeria, by 2030, the creative industries, with or without our governments, will be at $100 billion per annum in this country. That's just what it is, right? So my thing is, what proportion of that is coming here? What are we doing to attract it? How are we building it? I mentioned the market specifically because when I think of Aba, if I told you that Nigerian soft power represented by our artists. When I say artists, I mean visual artists, writers, musicians, software developers, architects, storytellers, Nollywood, Afrobeats. All of these people together easily have 1 billion followers, easily, on digital platforms worldwide. But you know what we don't have? We don't have product, we don't have goods, we don't have merchandise from the brands we've created. Where creates all these things and sells them, that place is called Aba. But the missing gap is transparency, right? For Aba to fill the gap that is needed to be filled, Aba needs to get visible, accessible, and needs to be transparent. So that if Don Jazzy or Flavor or Amokachi or anybody wants to do a merchandise deal with Aba, he knows he's going to get his money, he knows he's not going to get cheated, he knows his brand is going to be protected. That's why IP is critical. When the age of IP, we need our state governments and our educated professionals to help to work with our traders to protect IP in all our markets. It's affecting not just the creative industries. Anybody who does anything in cosmetics is affected by this, right? We have over 200 industries affected by this, and we control these markets. The idea that you're making money off somebody's work and you're not paying them is enough to kill everybody else that's trying to create. So the only way you can back creators, and the best way you can back creators, trust me right now, if Aba could just have that platform and be transparent, in the next 5 years, Aba could be doing $1 billion a year, just on that. There are enough Nollywood female stars to push product, but not one of them has a makeup line. Not one of them has a hairline. Why? Because we're not creating goods and merchandise to back the brand power we already built. And that's why I said that entertainment is known as show business, right? When we started pushing entertainment in Nigeria, the challenge was to validate the show. Because what used to happen is, unfortunately, people talk, you know, like I said, we like to be negative, we talk ourselves down. Ubi, why are you talking about these local boys? I beg, let's bring the Oyibo people. I'm like, yeah, that's... Why? Why should we have a situation where we don't appreciate who we are, what we are, and what we bring to the table? So what you have happening is all our biggest stars now, they hardly even talk to local press, right? They hardly even do things locally. Why? Because we haven't built the platforms. We haven't built the ecosystem. But who controls logistics in Nigeria? I think it's the Igbo guys. The retail, I think it's the Igbo guys. But so the gap is opportunity that is staring you right in the face every single day of the year. And one of the things about this is that when we talk about that opportunity, the other side of it is about the stories that lie behind these things. I was telling one of the guys, the last time I was at Enugu, I don't even want to say how long ago it was, it wasn't that bad, maybe 2 years ago. The last time I was here, I was talking about how it's very sad that at that time, but it's going to get a lot better soon, I know this. For years, easily for 30 years, I'd be telling Oyibo friends, Yoruba, Nigerian friends, man, have you seen Newi? Newi's crazy, the only community in Africa that had a World Bank loan without a government, blah, blah, and I'm just talking. But guess what? I couldn't find a single image online, video, to show me anything that was happening in Newi. This is up to 2018. I remember I was sitting, it's like, how is this possible? How are we sitting here and we're not able to show these places? So when you talk about, oh, Newi has this or has that, it doesn't mean anything to anybody if they haven't seen it. Because we're black people, we're very physical. If we don't see it, we don't believe it. We'll be your lying. They don't have anything. What are they really doing? So that kind of counter-narrative comes back to the stories we share and the stories we tell. And understanding the different forms of storytelling. There are different forms of storytelling. And what I mean by that is, music is one form of storytelling. Nollywood is another. Writing is one. Poetry is another. What he just did on stage when he was declaiming stand-up, spoken word is another. Visual art is another. So you can tell the story in many different ways, in many different lenses, but the fundamental thing is, you have to tell the story. I have to be able to back it up and show why. Where's the data? Where's the economic conversation, the economic argument that backs what you're saying? That is what we need, and we have the people with the brains to make it happen. You know, I know people want me to talk about entertainment and the sexy stuff, but the truth of the matter is the single most important thing is education. Okay? Education is the thing we have to get right. Because in Nigeria, from all indications, all the data we're seeing and the kind of graduates we're producing, the standards have fallen massively. It's not even just the standards, it's the percentage of people that are not even going to school. And I think that what we should be thinking about is, do you really need a 4-year degree? Is that the best thing to collect in 2022? Should we not be thinking about reforming our education? Focus on skills, digital skills, coding, software. Teach our people how to earn. Because if you do a 1-year coding course, the guy is going to start paying the bills for everybody in the family and he'll still be in Enugu. And these are the things that are critical for us. In 2017, I was on a panel in Oka for that last administration, and we had a whole conversation about the creative economy. Anambra State even set up a creative economy ministry. And right there in front of me, Chika Nwubi was sitting with me, and I said to Chika before we got on stage, I said, Chika, let's set these people up. So what do you mean? I said, look, Chika, how many local governments does Anambra have? I said 21, right? I said 21. If we take one building that belongs to the state government in every local government, that's a hub, right? So we have 21 hub network, Anambra Innovation Network, right there, bang. What does it cost us to equip those 21 buildings as a state government? It doesn't cost anything. It costs you maybe the money of hiring the hub manager and the team that will drive that. And if you put such a network down, trust me, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, everybody will feed into it because it's tangible, they can see it. This is 2017. The governor stood up, announced some committee, named us all on some council. We never saw him again. It's 4 years later. You know what happened? He came on stage. 6 months later, nothing had happened. I couldn't hold Chika onto Chika anymore. Ike Chioke, who we planned the whole thing with, called the governor of Edo State, who on hearing the idea, he hadn't even met Chika, he said, tell him to start coming. Chika landed in Benin. The governor didn't say, I don't like your thing. The governor said, listen, not only do I like what you're doing, I'm going to go and build a campus that takes 1,000 students, live, work, play environment, and please come and operate it for me on a revenue share basis. That place is going to open this year. And when it opens, I'm going to hear Igbo people saying, they didn't do it in the East. No, it's not true. We are constantly trying to bring things to the East, but you can't bring things to people who don't want to engage. It's impossible, right? So we need to change that. We must push collaboration. Enugu to Onitsha, when I was growing up, I had to confess, I've driven that thing myself in under 1 hour. We used to race on that road. We were like, I'll do it in 48 minutes. I'll be there, don't worry. Me and this man in the front row on his head, you know? But I don't even know what it is now, right? I know they've concessioned the road, but I'm telling you, if Enugu and Anambra states could get past the ego, they should have taken that road over together 20 years ago. It pains me that that road is the same length as the Lekki corridor. I mean, I really want us to think about that. It's the same length, 102 kilometers, 104 kilometers. It's the same length. The Lekki corridor, I've been living in Lagos long enough when the Lekki corridor was a single lane road. On the Lekki corridor today, investment is over $30 billion. 2% of it is Lagos state government. And I would say the Igbo investment in that money is probably 20-30%. Minimum. So why is that same thing not happening on the Enugu-Onitsha road and not happening on the Port Harcourt-Enugu road or the Onitsha-Owerri road? Because these are all corridors. The economists will tell you about economic corridors and how many Nigeria has. But the issue is we're not actually pushing our own best foot forward. So my prayer and appeal is that can we park our egos a little bit, reduce the sort of shoulder thing, no booga, and just collaborate. Because if you work together, what exists, I look at Enugu as a place that should be a knowledge center, an innovation capital for the Eastern region. With 20 universities, with Nsukka right here, that's enough innovation, enough academic power to power the future. But Enugu can lead. So what are the things I was talking about? I had some key recommendations. I shared my presentation to the team, and I'm sure they'll share it afterwards, but I wanted to talk about those key recommendations. I said, first of all, we must look at moving our markets to platforms. The second thing is, we must look at putting our people into the gig economy. The gig economy means that they can work here, they can earn global money, but pay their tax here and stay in Enugu. One of the biggest problems I always hear about is about people wanting to leave. How do you deal with retention? The way you retain people is to create value for them here. You have to build ecosystems here, not anywhere else. It has to be here. Because when it's here, then everybody wants to be here, right? So the first thing is the platform economy. The second thing is the gig economy. In terms of tourism and hospitality, we have incredible heritage sites and locations, right? But to get tourism and hospitality, you need security. So we need to sort out our security, and we need to focus on 20 years global experience, successful in media, publishing, arts, Nollywood, television, film, digital. We put them all together. We brought all the reports we could find nationally and sub-regionally, and we created a roadmap for the creative economy for the Southeast. As I'm going to share it to Center for Memory so they can share it publicly. Because keeping these documents and doing all this work, if the state governments aren't seeing it and they're not keen into it, then I think it's the public, it's the people that have to make the noise to say this is what we all need to be doing. This is not about Obi, it's not about me or any of the individuals, it's about everybody. Because trust me, if we don't engage, the world is moving, right? The world is moving, it's not waiting. In some places in the world, there's a recession right now. In some places, they're making 3 times the money they ever made because they were ready for the recession. Every recession is an opportunity. Even our present crisis today is an opportunity. What is the position of the East? What are we going to do to take advantage of those opportunities? For me, as I said, the single most important thing, and I want to repeat it again, is the people. So the last innovation, technology, I talked about the Innovation Council, but what I really mean, I thought about this thing. I said, look, the Naira has been devalued. If each state government in the East puts ₦1 billion down, that's 5 billion Naira. I was at Eastern Innovation Council. I can think of 10 people that should be on that council yesterday. And from there, you say, okay, go and find one of the biggest global accelerators, Y Combinator, startup, and you add them to the 10 billion as the program manager. And we begin tech acceleration for the Southeast. I'm telling you that within 5 years, you will create 5 unicorns. A unicorn is $1 billion out of Enugu, out of Oka, out of Onitsha, out of Nnewi, out of Aba. It's all here, it's with us, it's within us. But if we keep doing this game that we've been doing, we can't get there. Because we're not backing, we're in the age of ideas. We're in the age of IP. It's not about who has the biggest muscles, it's about who has the best story. Right? The world is not being dominated now. America didn't win the Cold War based on its nuclear weapon. It won the Cold War because the Russians wanted McDonald's and Levi jeans. They wanted to live that life. The human spirit is very hard to cage it. So no matter what you tell people that they should stay in Enugu, if you don't give them the opportunity, they're going to go. They're going to go, and you can't stop them. This conversation was happening in Enugu in 1984. I was here, I remember. Only a few stayed, but almost everybody left. Then they came back later as they got older. It was what they used to say then, it's a civil service town, it's not for young people. That can't be right. Enugu's got to be 24/7, driven by innovation and technology, with education at its base. That makes it a knowledge center, which means, to me, Enugu's cosmopolitan. It is sophisticated, by far the most civilized part of our part of the country. No disrespect to my people, but I have to give it up. I think Enugu always has been that. But to lead, you have to step up. And Enugu should be leading the East. Right now, I'm not sure that it is. And the thing for me, finally, I just want to look at my notes, because I had this long-ass presentation. I don't know how long I've been talking. You know, I was talking about Nigerian soft power, about the size of it and how it's growing. And when I talk about that, I want you to think about this. The state of California, the economy of the state of California, American women spend every year is more than Africa generates as GDP. What that means is, first of all, so that means respect black Americans, first of all. Stop talking down on them, stop thinking that we're somehow better than them. The reason why we excel in America is not because they are bad, it's because they created the opportunities for us to excel. We don't know that none of these schools they were not integrated by us. We didn't go through the 400 years of slavery. Any school you go to was segregated. Everywhere was segregated. It was color-based. We don't even remember that we had white-only areas in Nigeria in the 1940s, in the 1950s. GRA was a code for whites only. That's what it is. But we don't have it in our consciousness, so we don't really understand it. But California is a bigger economy. And what is California driven by? Innovation at Silicon Valley, entertainment, Hollywood, and then agriculture to a little bit. So, but to deliver soft power, you need to also have hard power. It means you need some infrastructure, you need some logistics, you need 24/7 electricity, you need access to markets. If you don't have these things, it's very hard. In the mentoring session earlier today, and I hear it all the time, young creatives are always like, how can we, what happens, where do we? And I'm like, listen, it's the same thing in every place in the world. If you go to Los Angeles, everybody that serves you a drink is an actor waiting to be discovered. If you go to New York, anybody that gives you something is an artist trying to get signed. Since 2000 and something, I get emails till tomorrow from Nigerians telling me, boss, I go take you to the Grammys. Standard. That's who we are. But the issue about it is we need more people to embrace and engage our people. Because if California is over $1 trillion economy just based on those two things, and these are things that are natural to us. Innovation is at home in Enugu. The first heart operation in Africa was in Enugu. The first computers created by black people, it's in Enugu. Enugu has so many firsts, but who's told the stories? Where is it celebrated? If you don't celebrate greatness, what happens is you diminish yourself. And this is something that I find unacceptable, because in reality, this place, I left Enugu in 1977 to go to school in England, but I was coming back every single holiday. My parents were like, Enugu, London. In fact, Lagos was a disaster. I didn't want to go to Lagos, so come back to Nigeria. If I have to spend one night in Lagos, it's like, you're crying. No, I want to get to Enugu. So when I was in England, I was thinking, people used to tell me that, oh, the way you talk, it's confidence. Yeah, it's because you went to Eton. I said, no, it's Enugu. Eton is later. But by the time I got to England, I'd already been drilled here. My parents already put it in my head that we're incredible people. I saw it every day. Igbo people are crazily talented. But a lot of times, it's like we back away from the talent, right? We don't want to engage our full capacities. And when you don't engage your full capacities, it gets left by the side. So if there's anything I want to really leave you with, is to think about that issue of how do you embrace the future. There's a couple of other things I was just going to talk about, because if I don't talk about them, I had them on my list. I wanted to talk about tourism. Everybody in Nigeria knows that Igbos go home at Christmas, but they don't know why. That homecoming is a multi-billion-dollar extravaganza waiting to happen. So if I create a homecoming brand across all 5 states of the Southeast. So I've run Calabar Carnival twice. The state shuts down the entire month, and all civil servants, all they do is the carnival. People say, why are they spending that money? Calabar was spending maybe $1 billion on the carnival, but let me tell you something. Every single hotel in Calabar was full the whole month. The people are coming in there, it's over 500,000 people, and they're spending money every single day. Food, beverage, accommodation. That's why people do destinations, events. It's not random. And when you look at the East and you think about the amount of people that come East, and it's like every year, it's like we're acting like we're surprised. Why are we surprised? We know that the whole world is coming East. So why don't we create our own platforms for ourselves? It's when you create the platforms, the brands can engage the platform. You can't go to the brand and say, give us a platform. No. Build the platform, have partnership. We don't need the government to pay for everything, but you do need the government security, logistics, venue, government assets, right? If you give that to us, we'll deliver the rest. But the point is, that's just one of the things. Think about sports. The natural sporting ability in the Southeast is peerless. We are Jamaica, that has dominated the world of sprints and track and field for the last 20 years. I would say 50% of Jamaicans are originally Igbo. All the sprinters from America, 50% of them are originally Igbo. Hey, by the way, don't follow my numbers. I claim everybody. So my Yoruba friends, good luck. I'm just taking them as Igbo. There are people. I'm privileged to be on something called Sport Nigeria, which is something that an institution that Frank used to run, the NESG, created an SPV to try to unlock the potential of sports. The single most important thing we have within that thing is something called Spaces for Sports. Spaces for Sports is a community-focused plan to try to build 300 facilities a year for the next decade. But what are these facilities? Neighborhood facilities in your village, in the city center, places where if you are in any city in the world outside this country, you can't walk 2 miles and not go past a sports facility that is open to the public. Public playing fields, public facilities. That is where you build sports, and for me, I make sports compulsory in school because sports is what gives you values. That's how you learn to win or lose. Right now in Nigeria, nobody knows how to lose. So everybody just freaks out when they lose. But when you play sports, you learn that after you lost the game, you have to kind of shake the guy's hand. If you watch rugby, the guy just finished trying to kill you. That's what happened. He's trying to kill you. End of the game, he's going to be like, oh, nice one. Yeah, man, you just almost took my head off. But after the game, he'll buy you a drink, and you might even become friends, right? That's what sports does. So sports, to me, is a critical development tool. And it's also one of the biggest businesses in the world that is being disrupted as we speak. Golf is being disrupted by the Saudi Arabians. As a model, the IPL is now in the top 10 most valuable sports brands in the year. Even if you don't play cricket, you must have heard of it. Rugby is coming now. They're coming for rugby right now. And that's going to keep happening. That European League you heard about, the Super League in football, is going to happen. It may not happen this year or next year, but it's going to happen. All right? Some of us who are football fans, you're watching, how is Barcelona spending all this money to buy people? They have no money. Because I kept saying to them, you're sitting on the biggest brand that the Igbos have. It's called Enugu Rangers. And it's just sitting there. And you people are using this thing to give money. Well, I said, if you did this brand properly, this brand could generate $10 to $20 million a year just on merchandise. Easy. You can easily have 1 million followers on Twitter. But you have to allow the professionals to do what they do and step out of this. But you know, politicians want to control these things for leverage. Yeah? But the truth of the matter is that people can no longer really allow that to continue to happen. Because that is why you don't have anything. Because Enugu Rangers, when I was a kid, I used to sit there and tell these guys, I'm in school in England, I said, they tell me about football. it took us so long to show up at the World Cup. I'd be boasting that the greatest footballers in the world are Nigeria. Stupid white boys be telling me, who are they? Where are they? There was not a single one. We hadn't even shown up. We didn't show up. And this is the problem. They've given me a notice, I've got to shut up. So I am going to, but I do want to say one thing, that when I think about this place and Enugu and the opportunity, what really hurts me is that it's all in your hands. Enugu doesn't need to go anywhere. The capacity is here. The knowledge is here. What is not happening is the right conversations. People need to park their egos and park the negative energy and focus on the opportunity. And what the opportunity is that everything you've seen before is actually nothing compared to what's about to happen. Because Web 3.0, the metaverse, all of these things are going to change everything. And the beautiful thing about this period is that unlike when the internet started, right, today we have coders and developers who are proficient today. We're not going to wait 10 years to catch up. We're ready now. There are people building solutions now, worldwide. They're building in Enugu now. Find them out, seek them out, partner with them, enable them. The future is fully yours, but to own it, you have to step into it. Thank you very much.
I wanted to pick your brain around tying it back to soft power, right? How do we, if you look at the East, if you look at, Enugu, for example, can you tie maybe one or two categories that you can say, this is the soft power for this region, for this state, let's hone down on it and let's see what can happen, 3-5 years from now?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I mean, first of all, I think the first clear thing is around technology. I think Enugu has a strong tech community. They're active. They're very engaged nationally. And they're beginning to see investment, right? And something that looks like a trickle today, by 2027, it could look like Enugu is the #1 spot on the continent. Yeah. But to be that, whoever is driving Enugu has to be intentional. It's not going to happen by accident. So the places that have done it, they put these things in place. For me, Enugu, if I was president or governor, my first appointment would be a chief innovation officer, not commissioner of land. The innovation officer, because let me tell you,
right? So I think it's also very interesting.
No, that's a wonderful thing. In my projection, I showed you that slide. I had one slide. I could have made 10 slides of Igbo people who are leading here, nationally and globally in this space. Yeah. But how many of them know each other? How many of them are connected? Are we using network effects? We're not applying network effects to our capacity, and I think that's a massive, massive mistake.
Yeah. And again, you talked about soft power, but you also mentioned hard power. Now, is there a possibility that, while I think both of them need to go hand in hand, can one probably go before the other if, hard power, which talks to infrastructure and the rest, is not readily available, it's a bit more capital intensive, can soft power go forward and, probably at some point they meet? Is that ever a possibility?
Not only is it a possibility, that's the journey of Afrobeats.
Okay.
Because I can tell you for free, when we started doing the music and you're sitting in Alaba or Idumota, the place you sit in where they take your CD, and it's on Baino or Tijo or Okoro, it's not some sexy office. Anybody could have this kind of global impact coming from where we're coming from. Yeah. So what happened is really technology and the platforms. Because if in 2005 I want to take NATO C or one of my artists and put him out in America on the East Coast Radio promotion budget just for the 3 states on the East Coast was $1 million in 2006. I don't want to ask the question of what it is in 2022. So nobody here can afford it. But when you look at the data, this is why data is critical. Today, when you look at the data on the heat map of the Nigerian top talents, and you look at the American talents, that's why promoters can put the dollar behind it. So you know what? I'm going to put Burna Boy on my tour list. I saw him last week. He sold out 20,000 in Houston. You can do the math.
Yeah.
He grows $10 million one day. He does 8 days, do the rest. 8 times 10, $80 million, right? We know Nigerians, they just think it's profit. It's not profit. But definitely he's doing well. And the big agenda is how do you get to touring in the first place? It's not random. It's not from the Instagram page. It's institutions. That word you used. In every sector of the world, there are institutions, right? But just that they disguise themselves, they use different language.
Yeah. And I find it interesting when you also talked about the platform and gig economy. So I bumped into this report, which I did some work with, and it made mention that at the end of the fiscal year 2021, Africa had an influx of about $5.2 billion in venture capital funding, which basically came to startups across Africa. And Nigeria took about 67% of that money. Now, thinking about it, I wonder, how much did the Southeast get out of it, really?
5%? 5%? I don't know. No, it might be less. Yeah. But then, how much support will the startups in the Southeast been given?
Yeah, so the interesting thing again is, we probably live in an age now where we have, young people who have grown up being less dependent on people in government. The question now is, how do we reach those young people?
Well, I think reaching them is not the hard part, right? When you say young people, I think like those people. I have never waited for government for anything, because if you do, that's the death of the entrepreneur. You can't wait for government. You have to go out and push your own agenda. But I think that young people can always recognize what is authentic. So if you engage them in an authentic manner, right, they will come naturally to it. I think you're going to see that happen a lot. There's a brand, Afia TV, that's coming. I don't know why. I'm not even going to say it because people are here, but I really feel that in the next year and a half, 2 years, because I know some of the programming and content ideas, that's what we need to see happening. We need to have storytelling. There's a book called The Advancement of African Capital. I don't know if you know it. It was written by an Oxford Don, 1984, I think. And that's the last book I've read that documents private and sector enterprise in Nigeria. And it is in that book that I saw listed 1,000 factories and industries in Nnewi in 1982. What has been done in the 40 years since 1982 intentionally by the East to grow Nnewi? I'm not aware. And that's a disaster. You can't blame anybody for that. We are responsible for ourselves. We have to be. And if you can't push your best asset, nobody's going to push it for you.
So as a people as well, in talking to the last statement you made about the book you read and 40 years after, do you think that we don't hold our leaders accountable enough?
We don't hold each other accountable. It's not just the leadership, right? So I ask these questions. It's like, why would it take, why do we need external validation to do what we should be doing anyway? Why do we have to look at Lagos to know that we should have mapped the East? The East needs to be mapped for innovation. It needs to be mapped for heritage sites. It needs to be mapped for the creative economy. If you do those 3 things, that creates the blueprint for investors. Institutional capital is not like, venture capital only goes where it's comfortable, right? It's not because they like me or you. Just like you fit, you did all the dots and T's and you cross it. Oh, okay, we can go here. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to play the game.
Yeah. Correct.
Think about Incredible India on CNN. I had the song in my head. I haven't been to India, but they brained me.
Incredible.
Exactly. Yeah. Incredible. But you got it in your head.
Correct. Interesting. So one last thing before I, ask our audience to also throw out some questions to you. You talked about leadership.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, or what would you advise would be the future of leadership for the Southeast? Do we have a particular way we see leadership, or do we have a way we should be seeing leadership?
Well, I'm not a big fan of personality cults, which seems to have been part of how we seem to think leadership should be.
Yeah.
My late father used to call it ABM, acting big man. Too many people on that tip. I prefer a situation where the leader can lead by example and understands. My dad always used to say to me that leadership is not a popularity contest, it's obligation and responsibility. And that obligation and responsibility is to the people you lead. So if you're able to deliver the things that make their lives easier and give them opportunity, then you're a great leader. Anything beyond that is vanity.
So interesting, talking about leadership as well. I think we can open up for questions for anybody who has a question or an insight. But talking about leadership, it's great that I also noticed that you mentioned Frank's name probably about 2-3 times.
Yeah,
and we also know that he is one of the gubernatorial candidates. So maybe we can give him the microphone.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Frank Mweke Jr. and I'm the gubernatorial candidate of the All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA. Well, like Obi, I think I've also had the privilege of being a guest speaker here. I think this was in 2019 when I spoke about the Igbo, I think the leadership question and the Igbo Renaissance or something. That is what I spoke about. And so Obi, it's good to see you. Thank you so much. Welcome to welcome to our city.
Yes, our city.
Our city. Thank you. But I mean, I didn't expect anything less, and I'm happy that I didn't miss this session. I very much enjoyed listening to you, and I was a little uncomfortable as we kept going back to some of the things we did together in the past. And I'm going to start from somewhere that might surprise you. Perhaps the first time that I invited you with a group of others that you also nominated to attend what I call the Creative Industries Forum at the Nigerian Economic Summit, one of the sessions in Abuja.
Yeah.
And the reason was very simple at the time. There was pushback from the board of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Some people did not understand the place, the role, and the importance and the power of the creative sector, especially the potential that it had to actually contribute to our national GDP. But when I spoke to Obi and a few other people, he got it, he grasped it, and we sort of ran with it. And today, the creative sector and the creative industry is a key component of the annual summits, and people have now begun to recognize the importance of this sector to national development, to branding, to national branding, to national branding, and then to the development of our economy. The potential that the creative sector has for job creation, the potential that the creative sector has for the growth of talent, and then even the potential that it holds for a nation, or in this case, a state, for really projecting you out there around the world. So it's so good to have you. But I would just make another comment, and then I would hand your mic back to you. And that is the question, the comment you made about leadership. Everything, ladies and gentlemen, rises and falls on leadership. Whether it is in your family, whether it is in a school, whether it is in Ńkàtá Ụ, whether it is in a state or in the nation. And so that you can trace a lot of the difficulties we have today as a state or as a nation to the quality of leadership that we have had in our country today. And if you want to know whether what I'm saying is correct, is right or wrong, then you might want to begin to compare, okay, this leader was here, what happened? The other leader was there, what happened? And so in my city today, right, there's no way they could have gotten it because the exposure is not there. The worldview is not there of musicians, entertainers, world class that Enugu has produced. There are few entertainers of note that have not come out of Enugu. And these guys are there, and we don't know what to do with them. You take Nollywood. Where did it all start, Obi? Where was it born? Nollywood was born here in Enugu. Nollywood was born here. The world, the nation first heard about Nollywood in this Enugu. But what is the story today? They have literally, mostly migrated elsewhere. Because our political leadership do not understand the opportunity that they represent for to help to grow this economy, to help to position our state, to help to train people, to help to employ people, and to help to tell the story of Eastern Nigeria. They don't get it. And that's why issues around technology, issues around Nollywood, issues around entertainment, the creative industry generally, are a key component of my agenda, my manifesto as governor. Because, as a matter of fact, you don't really need to put in too much money into those areas. These people already have the talent. They are already highly driven. A little incentive here and there. A little, maybe one policy to back them up. A little law to guarantee certain things for them is all you need. These guys are already doing what they love doing anyway. So, I thank you so much, and you can be sure that you're going to relocate once the elections are over. You need to come back here. I also see my brother, my colleague in government, Ńkàtá Ụ, who is here. The gentleman sitting right there, not many people know him. Emeka, if you may just please. Emeka was my colleague in government. A highly talented gentleman. So when Obi was talking about world-class personalities, yes, Igbo, and Nkanu man for that matter, an Enugu boy for that matter, a Nigerian citizen, but more importantly, a global citizen, highly, highly talented. And he was one of my key allies when I was minister. He was one of those that helped me to succeed. He was one of those that always pointed me in the right direction. He was one of them. He's from Enugu. But what have we done with him? Do governments even recognize that he exists? Do they even know what his name is? Do they even know what he's doing and whatever? And he's also the brain behind Afia TA. So these are people I have worked with. And so I hope that this would, I just happen to be around, and then, I'm attending this one. But these are the kinds of people that I'm either friends with, or allies with, or colleagues with, or these are the kinds of people that I hang with. They've got the stuff. And these are the kinds of people that any leader who wants to do well, who knows what he's doing, these are the kinds of people you want to have around you. So, Enugu, keep hope alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, for the very kind words. I'm delighted to listen to Obi Asika. I think when it comes to our industry, the creative industry in Nigeria, I can't think of a thought leader who not only can talk the talk, but also does the work. And I want to thank Center for Memories and Ńkàtá Ụ for making it possible, for inviting me to speak here. Well, for me, just to sort of re-echo this, two things I take from what Obi's presentation, right? Maybe to highlight, or maybe you can throw light on. That is important to build the soft power that I think that we all certainly want to want to come back, because when I look at who we are as Igbo people, and there's a certain resilience, and I said to my colleague at Afia that if there's anything we can do is to bring back this spirit of enterprise that we all, if you put an average Igbo man anywhere on this planet, two things will come to fore. He would defeat that element, or he would die trying. It's just no matter what. I don't know how that is the case, but that's who we are. But what's your story, or what angle would you say, in a literal sense, connecting the soft power aspect, the role of the media, and whether you feel that there's a way we can hack these two things? You know, this storytelling. Is there an easy hack? Is there something that we can do as a people to? Because I know we've had this conversation, many times before. Yeah. But how do we bring this so that our people don't lose hope in ourselves? Because I always beginning to feel that young people feel that, I'm losing hope. How do we bring back this energy, this spirit that we have, this spirit of endeavor and enterprise? How do we bring it back to our people? I just want to hear your thoughts about it. Thank you very much.
Hacks. The funny thing is, there are, as you know, with storytelling, there are some basic hacks. And even if you look at how storytelling has evolved, right? Every story has 3 acts: beginning, the middle, the end. And that is, if it's an album, if it's a book, if it's a poem, it's the same thing. If it's a folk tale, it's the same thing. I always talk about, what's the difference between Thor and Shango, or Amadioha and Shango and Thor. And people always say, it's packaging, they're the same thing. Well, Shango and Amadioha broke somewhere in West Africa. Maybe Amadioha around Enugu, Shango somewhere around Ogun State, broke and abandoned. Thor is heading to $100 billion. That's the reality. That's the difference. The difference is we have been afraid of ourselves. So if you can't engage yourself, how do you tell your story? We will all be alive, and somebody like Beyonce will go and make a film, and she will play Yemoja, and my Yoruba brothers and sisters will freak out. It's appropriation. I said, we've been sitting here for 1,000 years. You didn't tell the story. Beyonce got Disney to put out $60 million with Black is King. Got a Ghanaian co-executive director, 4 Nigerian producers, 5 West African directors, and fashion designers to basically deliver an African album, the biggest entertainment project Africans have ever seen budget-wise. They were freaking out. It's appropriation. I said, no, she's elevating you because we can't get the budget. If you and I sit with Disney, they're not going to give us the money. When Beyonce sits with Disney and says, hey, Enugu's hot, it's a wrap. So sometimes telling the stories about who are we telling the story to and where are we telling the story. I think there are certain stories that empower us internally, in terms of internal cohesion, and then there are the other stories that project our capacity. It is amazing to me, but this is not just about us. I just completed a documentary series that's showing on Showmax called Journey of the Beats, which is the journey of Nigerian music. And one of the things I realized when we're doing the project was that there's not one single biopic on any Nigerian. There's nothing on anybody. All these Igbo people that built all these trading empires, nothing. There was an idea you talked about earlier today, 100 by 100. Quick. But it could even be 2 minutes for Instagram. The stories today don't have to be the 60-minute documentary. You see what's happening on TikTok. TikTok, there are thought leaders on TikTok who before TikTok existed, they weren't making any money. Now they're getting booked for $1 million a speech. So I'm about to activate my TikTok account. It's like, I'm trying to get into that space. But that is what it is. So I think the key thing about it is to tell uplifting stories. This is what America did for years with Hollywood, right? They made you want to be American. You saw Tom Cruise in Top Gun. Everybody wakes up in the morning, they want to go and sign up for the US Army. We've not been intentional about this. We've just been sort of cruising. Because as you know, we don't have programming. So the minute we get programming, I think it's about editorial decisions at the end of the day. I hope I got close to an answer.
Challenges that young people face with respect to breakthrough, particularly in industries that are not popular. And I want to draw some sort of similarities with what you guys went through when trying to grow the entertainment industry in the country. If you look back, as you say, there were that challenges, there wasn't that support from the government. And I am saying it at the moment because there's someone in this room who I see I should call a pioneer. But the thing is, you look around, what he does, instead of getting support, what you see is the government trying to kill what should promote that venture he's into. Actually, he takes young people for hiking, and in so doing, the tourism industry in the state has been exposed. I've seen on social media where people who come from outside the country get to be, should I say, escorted around the state by the person. Now, what I want to ask here is this. What do you tell him? And how how is he going to get that major breakthrough that basically opens the industry? Because that's what happened to you guys. And also, for those in government, I think this is something that needs to be picked up. The landscape there is amazing, and we're not getting anything out of it. You go just around the corner here, you see that it's basically a logging site. I don't think that's what it should be, but that's what is happening. So could you help with that? Thank you.
Yeah, you're all failing. Why is nobody using a hashtag called My Enugu Story? That's easy. Put My Enugu Story on all your posts and build an aggregated community. That's how social media works. I was sitting with 5 or 6 of them, and if 6 of you post different stories, and it's all My Enugu Story, in a month, you're going to be viral. Because you're going to find people coming to look for the hashtag, right? And the second thing was, this is when I was complaining because I couldn't find, this is 2018, I couldn't find any city in the East shot by drone. In 2018, there was none. I checked this stuff religiously. By 2020, all of them had existed. But till now, I can see that no state government in the East has invested to film itself. These are just YouTube guys, YouTubers going around with their own money, like your friend, exposing the environment and the community. The truth of the matter, the work he's doing is passion-driven, right? People who are passion-driven, he's going to do that work whether he's paid, whether he's not paid. And that's the best thing about what he's doing. By the way, let me tell you, the entertainment industry, the music industry in Nigeria is not solved yet. Don't be fooled. Just because you're seeing the top 1% looking like they've blown, the journey is still just starting. Globally, our music is still less than 2% of the global music market. The agenda, but that's the facts of the matter. Our influence is much more than the 2%, but the volume is still quite small. Do you understand? Now, in Enugu, when you talk about what you were talking about, unfortunate truth, sometimes if you're a promoter and you're in the private sector, you will find sometimes that you do things that attract the attention of government, and then sometimes government almost becomes your competition. It happens in a number of sectors. It's not just the tourism thing. It happens with promotion, it happens with entertainment, it happens with business. You open a supermarket, the government guy opens one next to you because they think they have leverage and they want to dominate all the spaces. But the reality of it is, very few governments can execute your idea. What he needs to find are the brands who want to back experiences, okay? Hiking and all these things are about experiences. I can tell you that last year, during the pandemic, I have a friend, if you don't giddy traffic on Twitter, the founder of it is a lady. She's a travel person. I think she's been to like 90 countries. That's what she does. If she has 5 kobo, she travels somewhere. Because of the pandemic, she couldn't leave Nigeria for like a year. She's not Igbo. I can't remember where she's from. So I said to her, look, you know what? Why don't you go to the east, man? She goes, really? Where? I gave her 3 locations. She came down here. She went to Avohin, the waterfalls. She went into the cave with the bats. I mean, she was going to places I'm never going to go in myself, but it's just to tell you that when she sent me the videos, I was sharing them to my friends. I said, look at this. Look at it. People pay. You know, if you stand and walk on the road anywhere in Enugu, you'll see palm trees all over the place, yeah? You know that the world spends $1 trillion a year chasing palm trees. This world, the travel industry, everybody's trying to get to where the palm trees are. We live with the palm trees. Do you get what I'm saying? Even our domestic tourism can be 10 times bigger than it is, but it's all about what you see. If you don't see it, if you don't see that the hills are beautiful, that the caves are beautiful, that the lakes are stunning, and you don't want to experience it, it's very hard. But you have to educate your people to evolve to the place where they want to experience that.
It's not actually a question, but like, I'm letting my thought out. I'm a graduate of chemical engineering. Okay. I'm a graduate of chemical engineering. Okay. I came from Oka this morning. I grew up in Aba. I'm from Igbo State. I lived in the area. Your conversation, your speech was more about investing in each other, collaboration. Like by the way, this short is mainly about. I'm a creative executive. I have a team of artists. I manage them. We make records, make projects. But we find out that even when there's capital that we find out we source within ourselves. After creating these projects, they don't go anywhere because there's no that experience, not even funds to promote it, but like how to get this content to people to assimilate it. No, and there's no, I don't know how to express myself, but
you're finding it difficult to service. You're not able to service the broadcasters. Is that a problem?
To get the content out to
to go to radio, to television, to the right blogs.
It's a difficulty. And I came here and I noticed that thing that we're seeing on Twitter. It's encouraging. It's encouraging to have you here speak about this. It's encouraging to come and share your experience. And lastly, I want to shoot my shot. I would love you to be my mentor. I would want to. I want you to be my mentor. I want to be my director. I want to because I see myself as a loaded boy, but there's no one to shoot me. I'm just you said something about losing hope. You know how to do this, but you know that we see as the country day. I would love to. I would love to.
No, we'll talk after. Take it down. We're talking about access.
So you did mention in your presentation, you talked about IP. You said we're in the age of ideas and in the age of intellectual property. And I think that intangible assets are very important. My question is, how can we leverage as young people so that we are able to get economic benefits? For instance, I know that abroad, outside Nigeria, there are things like securitization of IP. You could go to banks for loans because they do value intellectual and intangible assets, but that's not the case in Nigeria. So we're in the age of IP, but what's happening to us? How do you actually leverage for economic benefits? Thank you very much.
My name is Nana Ngozi Chukwu. I'm from Obu. Sir, good evening everyone, please. I loved it when you said we should cut down our ego and collaborate. Okay, now I stand to be corrected. There's this belief that the Westerners loves education more than we do here in the East. Now my question is, why does the Westerners understand and practice collaboration more than we do? Is it because the Easterners does not like to be educated, or is there something we are not getting right? Because at some point, when you bring up an idea and you need someone to share with, or you need someone to collaborate with, especially here in the East, the way they will turn you down, it makes one feel broken. So I really want to get why it is like that here in the East. Thank you very much.
Okay. Everywhere I've ever been in the world, people pretty much have the same issues. In terms of finding support in your own support system, I was telling some of the people at Center for Memories earlier today, I think it's very, very important to surround yourself with positive energy. You know how you have friends that have negative energy? You have friends that have positive energy. When you're trying to develop something that's important to you, that you're passionate about, keep the negative energy away from what you're developing and be laser focused on that thing. And all you need at that time are real friends. You need a friend who's going to tell you, my sister, this thing can't work, or my sister, try it this way. But you don't need a friend to tell you, are you stupid? Do you understand? That's what you're talking about. People who are diminishing you based on your ideas are not worth sharing your ideas with. Because everything in this world is based on ideas. Everything we're using, phones, devices, the internet, is somebody's idea. The difference is, are you able to execute the idea to apply it, right? That's applied knowledge. If you're talking about education, I'm not really familiar with this thing that the West is more interested in education than the East. But maybe, I know we always used to talk about, especially young men in the East, you know, here, my boy, go to the market, look for money, right? And in a way, technology and innovation has disrupted education, okay? I said it at the beginning. If you're 15, 16, 17 today, the first choice for you may not be a 3-year degree in the humanities. That might never get you a job. But if you got the digital skills as a graphic artist, you could work for every day for the rest of your life. So you have to be functional. Today is about skills. In the old days, they used to call it vocational training, but really digital skills, coding, software development are saleable. You know, if I could learn how to code today, I would. I have a friend who learns how to code, he's 53. He learned last year. It's totally changed his life. I'm just looking at the man is earning dollars in Lagos. I'm very jealous, right? But it's the skills he has that the people are chasing. So that's what I would say to you. IP, it's so funny you talked about that. At the Bankers Committee a couple of years ago, in fact, even in the committee I chaired the committee I chaired in the National Development Plan on the creative industries, my number one recommendation was this single issue. I said, IP in Nigeria must be able to be collateral, okay? When banks say they can't make IP collateral, they're just being lazy. For 100 years, IP has been collateral in London, in Paris, in New York, in Los Angeles. The methodology, the financial techniques to do IP as collateral have long existed. So when a Nigerian banker is telling me Nollywood is not structured, I'm like, what in Nigeria is structured? What does that mean? He's from here. After he spent 15 years doing that, you know, the biggest platform where all African content sits is YouTube, right? He's the CEO of YouTube for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. He's Igbo. Do you understand what I'm saying? Sam built Trace Nigeria to be the #1 in Nigeria, ahead of Hip TV, ahead of MTV Base in Nigeria. He's Igbo. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's how it is. I told you about Chris Ubosi with Beats FM, right? What I didn't tell you is the person who licensed all of these things is sitting here. Do you understand? Capacity, knowledge, activating the right people who can execute, right? Our people are getting it done every day, everywhere. But at home, we have a challenge, right? And the challenge is we don't seem to see each other. So you see what I said? You're making the clothes, you're coming out of a bar. Man, my brother, set up buyabar.com. Just, do you understand what I'm saying? Build your own platform. And let me tell you something that will help you and anybody in the music industry. Sam created something with Hip TV and Sound City and Trace. And this is for music people. It's called Levels. Yeah? So Levels is basically a promotional platform package. So artists, promoters, labels can engage Levels. Levels can do everything from video promotion, distribution, shoot the video, put it on TV. How do you get on the right playlist? Right? How are you visible? If you're sitting in a bar, you're sitting in Enugu, the people making the playlists, they don't know you, right? So things like Levels are funnels that are going to help that process. So I think it's those sorts of things. And the truth of the matter is, somebody can do it as a business out of Enugu. Because all the talent in the East needs to be aggregated and pushed somewhere. So that's a free, why don't you do it?
Thank you very much. We can, again, we don't have enough time.
Okay, right. Fight for an Igbo man to really stand out anywhere and say, Abumonyi Igbo. Unfortunately, it appears that today, both of them have disappeared. We seem to be a people who are, acting as if we are no more the children of our fathers. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because I would want you to kindly, tell me what new thinking we need in this environment to bring the success and the exploits of the Igbo back to Igbo land. I think that's something that is lacking, and I know that we cannot go on blaming the government every time. If we are really a very extraordinary people, how come we have not been able to think our ways, think ourselves out of the developmental challenges that we have for a people that are as gifted as the Igbo people are? And in your presentation you cited so many things, even in the last comment you made, which has to do with Levels and the man who was behind Hip TV and Sound City and other stations happens to be an Igbo man. So why is it so difficult for us to bring these things home? Why is it difficult for us to make an example of Igbo land if we are such a great people? What are your thoughts on this, sir? Thank you.
Because I was here, right? So memory is important. That's why I love what Center for Memories is doing. And it comes back to the storytelling, yeah? So a classic example is about celebration. But celebration without vanity. Vanity is easy. We're very good at it. We can Otiku from morning to night, hail the guy, he's the chief. We do that. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that in every single inch of this world, there are Igbo people doing great things. Not just in Nigeria. And how do you flip that energy around for them to do great things in Igbo land? That, I think, is the primary concern of almost all Igbo people once you get to a certain age and you start to think about your life's journey and your life. man, okay, I'm sitting here in Lagos, but why am I really in Lagos? It used to be because you needed to be near this or near that. But with technology, frankly, you can sit anywhere. You don't need to sit in Lagos. I could go and sit in Onitsha. My daughter will kill me because she'll be like, ah. But how could I make Onitsha a place where she wants to go? Do you understand? If I knew the answer, I'd already be retired. That's the simple truth. But I think the answer lies in the kind of work Afia TV is going to be doing. Because when true storytellers engage great stories, biopics, documentaries, specials, award shows, there are many ways, right? There are many, many ways. And we have endless stories, you know? There are endless stories. I'll tell you one story just to finish, because I think it's the last one. It's about this question, when my late father was in government in Enugu, 1974, they wanted to build an airport. Somebody, a friend of his, I don't want to say the name, was pushing for Julius Berger to come and do the airport, 1974. My father told him that I don't award contracts, I'm not involved. It's a tender board. They can come and tender, but I've never awarded a contract. The guy was telling him, don't be silly, take care of you. He said, guy, it's not possible. I don't award contracts. But let them come and tender, because I know they're an excellent company, and we want excellent people. But I have to tell you that we have a direct labor agency in our Ministry of Works. And our direct labor agency is so good that since 1971, 1 year after the war, they've been winning contracts in river states, in cross river states, in Midwest region, in Benin. Open tender bids. So if you're coming to tender, of course the man from Lagos is like, are you mad? I'm bringing Julius Berger. How can? Well, just come and tender. They tendered, they lost. The DLA built that airport. It hasn't changed much since 74. They built the airport. 2 years later, when Anambra and Imo were split in 1976, the man who was head of the DLA retired because he was from Imo and he started his own business. And he became one of the biggest construction moguls in this country. His name is Emmanuel Nwayawu. You have the capacity sitting right here, but you have to engage it. This is 2022. We don't need anybody except ourselves to win. That's it.
Thank you.
Onye gwara ya okwu taa bụ Obi Asika, mana nyanwa ka m ekele n'ikpeazụ ka nkelegodi ndị ọzọ bịa nọnyere anyị. And I want to start with a gentleman that spoke first when it came to question time and comments, the real Ńkàtá when it was opened up. The former Honorable Minister, by his grace, hopefully His Excellency to be, Frank Weke Jr. Kaiko Frank. I'll tell you that I met Frank for the first time. He may not remember this. It was in London when Obasanjo was president, and Obasanjo came to the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, to speak. And Frank sat next to the president at the time, and I was seated behind you, second row. That was the first time I saw Frank live, and I'm delighted that you're doing what you're doing now, that you've summoned the courage to run for governor of Enugu State, because I think you have the right worldview. We need the right people to come out to contest. Any number of, by the way, I have a number of friends who are running for governor in Enugu State, and I have the right people with the right worldview. Whoever wins it will make Enugu State a great state. So Frank, good luck. And with time, I will speak to the incumbent chairman so he can come back to the club to address Enugu Sports Club when the campaigns open in September. And then he will be in the main lounge, which is much bigger than this, because we'll be expecting a huge crowd for that. That one them. Next to Frank is a gentleman who ran for governor in Anambra last year. Indeed, both of us ran in APC. All Progressives Congress, and what happened in Anambra then. Sir Azuka Okosa. Azuka is a senior member of the club. He's over 30 years ago, he was a local government chairman, in fact my local government chairman, when Newi local government was still together, since broken down into I think 3 or 4 local governments, but he ran the local government as one unit, so Azuka. And he was commissioner, by the way, under Mbadinuju, in 2 different ministries in 1999. That's him. And I want to acknowledge the presence and say thank you to a postgraduate lecturer from Godfrey Okoye University. He is Mr. Ugu Esquire. It is not for me to welcome him or to say thank you. This is his show. I mean, this is really a Center for Memories event, and he's a member of the board, and I think you have something to do with Microsoft, if I'm not mistaken. So let me say welcome too, but we'll hear from you. I'll jump Obi and appreciate my brother Emeka Mba, who spoke, and Frank referred to Emeka when he spoke too. Emeka, actually, Obi, I don't know if you realize that your trajectories actually crossed each other. You were heading from Nigeria to England around 77. If I'm not mistaken, Emeka was coming back from England to Nigeria. In fact, you were heading from Enugu to England, and he was coming back from England to Enugu to join me at National Grammar School, Nike. Okay? So I'm really happy that you've gone on to do great things in Nigeria, and I want to appreciate you because when you were DG of Nigeria Broadcasting Corporation, I was leading Innocent a drive to provide a digital platform to rival Microsoft and whatever DSTV is doing today. And you were very helpful at the time, so I appreciate that. And I know your capacity and of course what you're doing with Afia TV. I'm proud of you. Should have been sitting here, but I didn't notice that. The immediate past executive chairman of the Enugu Sports Club, who's the Honorable Onyeka Onwe, who was my vice when I was chairman here, and who ran the club very, very well and left, his footprints on the sands of time, and was a gracious host to Ńkàtá Ụ in his time as chairman of the Enugu Sports Club. Onyeka, really happy to see you. Thank you. I will round up, I won't take so much time, but it's very important that I do these things. And having acknowledged the Mecca National Grammar School, Nike, our senior is here, Ndupo Obuja Esquire, and the wife is a lawyer too. And Bujas, I think before Emeka leaves tonight, you have to punish him. Let him kneel down for a second. He was a junior then. Now, a chartered accountant I saw earlier, Emeka is here. I don't know if he's still around. He's a fellow of ICANN. He's my senior professional colleague. Yes, I always appreciate you. A man who who is always here and who will always support the right projects. He supported me greatly when I ran for governor. And after sort of mentioning the big names, let me use a young lady who's always here, as we say as Christians, as a point of contact for all the young people here and all the young people who have been supporting Ńkàtá Ụ. Ebere Okoye. Ebere, are you here? Can you stand up to be acknowledged? Take this acknowledgement on behalf of all the young people who have always been here. And now it is time to talk about Obi Asika. You and I spoke a few months ago on the TEDx Asata platform, and you spoke about soft power on that occasion. When you started your speech, you did mention that you're not a professor and that you were humbled by the list of professors and maybe one or two others like myself, not a professor too, and Frank. But believe me, a number of our professors should come to you to take the right lectures on soft power. It's a very niche sector that is often ignored, yet very powerful, that we can leverage on to increase our GDP. You did so well. In fact, I didn't want it to end. I did not want it to end. And often, as a public speaker myself, you wonder your speech, how it's being received, how well you're doing. Without living here, I can tell you that you hit all the right notes for us. When you were talking about the presentations you gave to various governors, and they didn't understand what you were talking about. No way would they have embraced it. So we're not serious-minded about leadership, and like Frank said, everything is about leadership. Everything is about leadership. Until we get the right people in there, we'll continue to wallow in the dark and nothing will change. We have all that we need to explode. Here, we don't need to. And Frank, by the way, when I said I was going to get you back to the club, the last two governorship candidates of APGA that came to this club won. In 2017, I'll end with Obi, I'm not done with you yet. In 2017, when I was chairman, it was my first term as chairman, I invited Obi to come. He came, had a good time, and he won a few days later. And came in November 2017. Soludo came here in October 2021. A few days later, he won too. Maybe I didn't win because I did not address the club. But I didn't need to address the club. I thought I already known at the club. I think I'm actually very excited to be here. Not because of what you have seen. I pretty much knew what to expect coming to listen to you. This is the biggest thank you I want to now give to you. But it's one that will go beyond the four corners of this wall. Your father, Ajir, became the administrator of East Central State. If I recall, it was in October 1967, at the heat of the crisis, the Biafran War. But that's not why I've just mentioned him. I mentioned him because when the war ended, he became the first president of Enugu Sports Club 1929, after the war. So I don't know, I'm not sure you're aware of this. Good. Your father, but not that he became the first president after the war. Your father became the president of the club that midwifed the first indigenous chairman of Enugu Sports Club in Isaac Ene in 1971. He was the president that inaugurated the first indigenous, because before Isaac Ene, it was known as the European Club. But the war saw the Europeans leaving and it became Enugu Sports Club, and we started leading the club. And from Isaac Ene in 1971, I was privileged in 2017 to becoming the 26th president, indigenous chairman of Enugu Sports Club. And seated behind you is the 27th chairman of Enugu Sports. So this club holds a lot of your father in high esteem. So if you didn't know that before, please know that now. And I did a sports club museum before handing over. There, I believe I had the pictures of every president that I could find, and your father's picture was there. And I have gone to Isaac Ene's house, the first chairman, meet the widow and to see pictures of Isaac and what he did at Enugu Sports Club. So I had to be here tonight, and thank you so much for what you have done. I'll say on behalf of the Center for Memories, on behalf of Patrick Okibo, Nkemi's here, Nana Imude, and the rest of the gang, and the rest of the gang, thank you so much for coming, and we hope the conversation continues. What is important is not what has happened within the four walls, corners of the walls we're in this evening, but what all this camera would have made of it. It's being carried live on various social media platforms, and Ńkàtá has a global audience, so just don't worry that the audience here, it's a global audience. We have quite a lot of people who are watching proceedings from the US, in the US and in the UK, all over the world. And that's actually part of why we don't mind talking about giving the lecture in English, so that our kids born abroad can follow. Next month.
Thank you very much.
If you see me, call me Makana for money,